The following is a conversation with Gustavo Sanchez Perez. My first contact with Gus was around 2010, when he was working as the RealFlow product manager at Next Limit in Madrid. As some of you may know, Next Limit's other famous product is Maxwell Render. During that time, I was experimenting with RealFlow in my spare time to figure out a realistic way for simulating weathering effects for the procedurally built buildings I created when working with CityEngine, back when it was still developed by the startup called Procedural. We then met multiple times in person between 2011 and 2014 at SIGGRAPH conferences, where we were working at booths right next to each other. Gus had previously already been a strong VFX artist, and after his time at Next Limit, he moved on to Toronto. Since then, he's been mainly working as an FX supervisor in multiple VFX studios such as Mr. X and Rodeo FX, working on countless Hollywood blockbusters. Gus is also a board member of the Visual Effects Society's Toronto section. Just recently, I got in contact with him again after he published an article on LinkedIn on the current state of the visual effects industry in 2024. You'll find the link in the episode description. It resonated very strongly with myself, but also with many others, as even though it's addressing all the bad realities, it is written in a calming way and addresses constructive ways how to make the best out of the situation. So I can highly recommend to read it. Thank you, Gus, to be my guest on this podcast and share your wisdom with us, especially on the topics of psychology, social skills, and work-life balance. Stay humble, stay curious. This is the 3D Environment Podcast. And now, please enjoy the conversation with Gustavo Sanchez Perez. Sweet. Gustavo, it's a pleasure to have you on this 9th episode. Welcome, and it's an honor to have you on as a guest.
Well, the honor is all mine. I've been really wanted to be here. So thank you for having us.
Well, but for those that don't know you yet, tell us a little bit about your background and where you're from and where you are at the moment.
Oh, yes. I'm a Spanish artist. I've been moving around quite a bit. I'm from the Canary Islands in Spain, from an island called Gran Canaria. And I'm currently living in Toronto, but I've been in the UK, in London, Birmingham. And we move a bit around Spain as well, like Madrid, Santiago, Barcelona. So, yeah, a bit all over the place.
Super international. Well, a lot of people would probably ask, why would you leave the Canary Islands? It's so cool to go there for holidays, right? But I guess you have a little bit of different perspective.
Well, yeah, I would say I've been away from the islands for 25 years. I was just back there a couple of weeks ago for the Animajo Animation Festival, and people were pretty much asking the same, how is Toronto? So you just switch the snow for the beach.
The grass is always greener, right?
Yep, exactly.
What has changed since you got back to the islands?
Well, that's a very good question. I think that they're doing the things that I wish were there when I was a kid in terms of animation, VFX. There are I would also say infamous tax incentives that the industry has all over the place. They now have some really good ones. I believe the best in Europe, in the islands these days. So there's a bunch of companies like settling there. Platish Image was the last one announcing that they are opening a studio there. And there are already some very good animation studios in Gran Canaria and Tenerife. So there is a future for the new generations, and we saw a lot of talented artists while we were at the festival. So that's pretty much what have changed since I studied, because I have to leave the islands to study in the mainland. Actually, not in the mainland. I went to the other Spanish island, to the Balearic Islands, to study animation. So that, at the time, there was nothing in the Canary Islands. Now there is, basically.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't even know that the tax incentives are being pushed also so hard around these locations. That's cool. I mean, I know more and more European countries in generally are getting some tax incentives, but I didn't know about this detail.
No, and I find it really appealing for anyone, just because the Canary Islands is a hub. We are in the middle of the ocean, like connecting the African continent, which I think that has a huge potential. We are European. We are like a stone throw to Europe. And then we also have great connections to Latin America and North America as well.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense. I'm sure we will be talking more about these things later on, but I'm curious, how did you get into the visual effects industry, or did you, because you mentioned you were living in a couple of places. I assume that wasn't only pure VFX. So what were the stations you had throughout your career, and then how did you get into visual effects?
Actually, pretty much we have moved for work and for VFX. So the reason that we leave the islands was I was studying computer sciences. And one of my teachers, who I give all the credit for who I am these days in the industry, he showed us something like there was a master's degree in the Balearic Islands where they were doing animation like for a year. And we had a week in animation in the computer sciences school. So
that's amazing.
That opened my eyes. And then after that, I think he organized a webinar on storyboarding with a producer, like Spanish producer. So I was like, wow, this is like a whole new world away from just pure coding. So I kind of pushed myself, and I got me and my brother were actually like learning how to model in 3D Studio. And I applied for that master's and I got in. So I spent a year, 1998, in Mallorca, in the Balearic Islands. That's where also I met my wife, who was also studying there. And pretty much the rest is history. From there, we went to did an internship in Madrid, but then after that, flew to the UK almost the year after and didn't come back to the islands. It's all work.
Ever since you've been traveling, I assume you mentioned it or you implied it with your wife, or is kind of, you also mentioned your brother who's kind of been going in this direction, but is there still a connection for him also to the industry?
There isn't actually. He's a chemical engineer and he was working in hospitals, and then he decided to become a chef. So it's no, but he actually uses 3D to create 3D molds. So to do like cool dishes. That's the only connection that he has with 3D these days.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, and I mean, just being a chef, cooking for a living, even that, I mean, that in itself is also extremely creative, right?
Yeah, he's an engineer. His mind is like brilliant. So he just invents things, whether it's in the kitchen or whatever business he does.
It must run in the family.
Need to find who to blame now.
Oh, cool. But yeah, before diving a little bit deeper into the different topics and kind of diving into the work in the industry, maybe we need to clarify a little bit also of the terminology for those people that are not too aware of some of the terms we might be using quite often. And so can you explain the difference between special effects, VFX, and FX in general? Just what in your line of work, what these things mean?
Yeah, sure. And this is a question that kind of gets asked quite often. And I think there is even a couple of YouTube videos that explain it like in more detail than what I'm going to do now. But to put it just in simple words, special effects are practical effects, things that you capture on film. Like you go to shoot something and you create a fire, you do an explosion, but for real. And then you're going to use that in compositing to add it to the film or the production that you're doing. VFX doesn't have to have practical effects or CGI or anything. You can have a pure compositing of like a background element with some characters that you recorded on a blue or green screen, for example. And that's still VFX. And effects is the one that gets confused all the time. I like to refer to it, that's the way I did it a couple of weeks ago when I was doing the presentation, and it was in Spanish, which for me was even weirder because I normally talk in English in the industry. But effects is effect simulations. It's like you have to simulate, you have to mimic nature or anything that you want to do that you cannot do practical. So you have to generate it in a computer.
So that's purely digital.
Yeah, digital effects, exactly. But digital simulations. And that it can even get more confusing if you're talking effects, but it's CFX, character effects. It's not pure simulations of, like, let's say, water, fire, destruction, but maybe hair or trees moving or grass or cloth.
Yeah. And then if you, for example, change to the games industry, visual effects is something completely different, right? Visual effects there would be exactly what you just described as special effects in the film industry. So kind of explosions and smoke and particle systems and that stuff. So it's really tricky, or no, it's important to be aware of the different meanings when talking to the different people from different industries. Otherwise, you get confused.
Yeah. It kind of came to my mind like an analogy. You have a slang. We shouldn't be comparing slang to the terminology. Like if there is a terminology, everyone is going to be moving with that terminology, right? Because if there is money involved, especially, you have to know exactly what you're talking about. But when you talk about people from one part of the country, or even in the islands, we have different slang across different villages in the island. So it's the same language, just it's
or slang or dialect.
Dialects, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, did you experience different slang or different terminology just going within the visual effects industry from company to company, where you had some misunderstandings, just understanding what the person means?
Yes, I've seen that, and I think I have it on the tip of my tongue. Like the kickoff, for example, meetings to explain to the artists what they have to do. One company called them differently. What was it? Oh yeah. Well, it's like spotting. Some people say spotting. Some people say kickoff meetings, for example.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And then I have like, but maybe it's slightly different. But I also have the confusing terminology. Now that I'm a member of the BES Society. I'm working with the Toronto Visual Effects Society board, and we putting together a panel in production and talking to the visual effects education committee. We mentioned this, and we got to talk to some producers in LA, and the terminology that we were using, it was like exactly what you were saying. We were talking about the same thing in a different way constantly. And it was a lot of back and forth just to make us understand each other. Pretty much, yeah. There's,
for example, these famous books from the Visual Effects Society about VFX in production. I just forgot who the authors were. Okun, I think, is one of the authors. Just the last name. And there were multiple people involved. And I would assume that kind of, at least within the circles of memberships, or of the people that are members of the Visual Effects Society, kind of books like these might actually help at least a little bit in standardization of language. Yeah. But I guess it's really hard to then kind of implement it in the individual, on the company level, right? Because probably a lot of the pipeline tools have just a certain naming, right?
Yeah, I think that's part of the issue, that every company may have different backgrounds, and they may have legacy naming, but in the end we all get to understand each other, so it's all good.
Nice.
We are not machines.
not yet.
Not yet.
So you've been working in animation, visual effects, but also software engineering, and I'm sure we'll also dive into this a little bit more, but just to mention it, you've been part of Next Limit, of the Real Flow software tool for some time. Now, you having switched between the different roles of visual effects and animation and software engineering, what's the main difference to you of, let's say, the type of work in those fields?
If we look at things like we are a group of people doing something with a goal and some challenges, it's all the same. It's like you get to any company, whether it's software, whether it's animation, VFX, there is always a task that has to be done by a certain date. And we have challenges and we have constraints. And every individual is different. You have to make sure that things work for everyone, everybody's happy doing it. If we make an abstraction like that, there is no difference working in any company. Having said that, software probably is driven by, probably not software, everything is driven by profits and money. So you still have to deliver as soon as you can so you can keep making money. But I would say software might be more relaxed than VFX overall, and animation might be more relaxed than VFX, but a bit maybe more stressful than software because you have deadlines. When in software you have the scrums and you have things that you have to finish by certain dates, but they are not as, let's say, stressful as when you are in a company that you have certain tasks, maybe too many tasks at times that you have to deliver by a certain date. In terms of like being a human being with other people doing things, I enjoy all.
Which is a very, very important aspect of everything, right?
Yeah, happiness is all. You have to be happy working. You have to be happy with the people you work. You have to be happy with the task that you are given. And you have to be happy with the result. I have a friend that's the first question that he always asks is, are you happy? And I think he's right. Yeah.
That's also definitely a topic that we'll cover in more detail afterwards, I'm sure. But so I'm curious with, because you have been working in these different industries that have kind of basically completely different, let's say, structure, or you could also say kind of a classic education to get into them. So if we just simplify to two fields, one is software engineering and visual effects. If you would say kind of, if you have two stages of or let's say primary education, that's typically the first education, and then maybe a couple of years later, a secondary education or maybe specialization. Would you say you can generalize that, for example, doing software engineering first and then switch into visual effects is easier, or is it the other way around?
I'll say maybe I need to clarify because I wasn't technically a software engineer when I was working at Next Limit. I was an artist working with or a technical artist working in a software company. So I came back to Next Limit after a few years already in the industry, and I had used their software in production. I think that was what was interesting for them. So I could keep pushing the boundaries of the software or the developments. And at the same time, I knew what the clients might be looking for.
Yeah.
So I wasn't coding when I was at Next Limit. I was coding, and I didn't probably give you that hint when I was at PlayStation. I also worked in games back in London. But that was just pure fun, like the itch of someone that studied computer sciences. I wanted to code something. So I like to change from place to place what I do. And that's kind of part of how I grew in the industry, I would say.
I see.
But to go back to your question, is what's more difficult going from VFX to software to VFX? I think if you are fast on adapting to things, there shouldn't be a problem at all. If you have an artist's eye or mentality, you can go to a software company and approach the task from your creative perspective and still like create with that willpower, I would say. One of the things that I learned when I was studying at university, and that's probably one of the best advice I was given, was you can learn anything as long as you put your focus on. And you don't have to constrain yourself to the title that you get when you come out of the school. Like you open a manual and you learn the thing, basically.
Yeah, Yeah, the last part of that sentence was really interesting. As long as it's kind of independent of the title that you're getting, that's such an interesting little detail. But I would actually also add to that, you can learn everything, kind of if you're really interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Otherwise, you will struggle forever.
Oh, 100%. When you talk about learning, you can also talk about delivering on a task that you're given. If you don't like what you have to do, your work won't be good.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah. Very, very true. Very, very true. Yeah, I was just addressing this kind of switch from from more creative sides of visual effects or animation, or as we just learned, also games, to kind of software engineering, because of you mentioned you had this background in that. But yeah, I mean, we're in today's age, I think, with all of the supporting tools like, I don't know, Copilot and kind of ChatGPTs and all of those, I think the entry level to go also to get into programming are much, much lower. The stuff is much, much more accessible, and kind of using pre-existing libraries or like code fragments that are already existing, to just use them within a couple of lines of code. I think the entry level there is quite easy to jump if you're really interested in this topic. But I also see that if you're, for example, a 3D artist, if you have certain expertise, not necessarily in kind of deep or low level programming, but in general to be able to write scripts to help automate certain monotonous, repetitive tasks, that makes you even more valuable as an artist in general.
Yeah, you mean like if you can code, you have an advantage.
Yes,
100%. That's kind of how I started like approaching my initial steps in animation. I was working in London in an animation company. I was animating in Maya, which I loved. And that was kind of my initial idea. Okay, I want to do animation. Yeah, actually, I wanted to do modeling, but they said, "Oh, you're better at animating." I was like, "Okay, so we'll animate." So I started as an animator, and then there was a program that they were using in that company. I think it was called Magpie, that was doing the lip sync for the characters. Mm-hmm. And I was learning Maya because when I started, when I did the course in '98, there was no Maya. So I was learning Maya at the time. At the same time, I was animating, and I saw that they had Mel scripting. So I went like, "Ooh, that's interesting." And the output of that Magpie could be hooked up in Maya with VML. So I wrote a script to automatically just place all the lip sync in the characters that we were animating. It wasn't my task. I was just employed to animate. But I saw that I could do that, so I did it. And then after that, the people kind of rely more on me to do scripts. And after that, I got a job at the MPC because the guy I worked in the company was at MPC at the time, and he knew that I could do more than just animation. So,
it's a fantastic little anecdote, but I think it's not necessarily just with creative workflows in general and with scripting, let's say. This is something that if you have multiple expertises that are kind of connected a little bit, but they are still two separate jobs, or two separate job positions, if you have the capacity to combine them somehow, at least, makes you so much more valuable, because you suddenly have you're getting into a strategic position.
Yeah, I think that having a kind of a bird's eye view of things always gives you an advantage. And this kind of goes back to how the things were back then and how the things have like gone in the past few years, like where everybody is sort of specializing. And now with the trends in the industry, and maybe we will talk later, and how the industry is in a bit of a rough state. From my perspective and my experience, I think generalists will be more valued now again than people that are pure specialists.
Yeah. Let's move on to talking about your position at the moment, or what you've been doing for the last couple of years as an FX supervisor. Can you give us a little bit of a description of what that means?
Yeah, sure. This might be like what you were saying earlier. Different companies might have slightly different descriptions for the same positions. I believe we are doing something at the Visual Effects Society also to kind of standardize all this, and might be coming soon. But to me, an FX supervisor is someone that, for starters, has to prepare the shows. Like, you get with the production team and you know what the show is going to be. So you kind of do a breakdown and maybe you do some setups if you are hands-on, or maybe you rely on the leads on the show to do those, but you're going to be guiding people to do these things. And then you mentor anyone that is on your team. You oversee and you mentor them to make sure that they are at the best of their capabilities. And you also have to do the quality control. So you have the final word for what's going to be shown to the visual effects supervisor on dailies. So it's kind of a responsible delivery, or maybe I phrased that incorrectly. You are responsible for the quality of the work. You are the ultimate responsible in your team. It's not the artist. You have the final responsibility. So that's kind of an overall view of what an FX supervisor should be doing, in my opinion. And like I said, there might be slightly differences between companies. For example, when I was at Mr. X, even though we may have at times like 30 people in the department, there was only one supervisor, and different shows had a lead, which technically were doing all this. And the FX supervisor was the head of department. Other companies may have a head of department, and then supervisors, and then leads, and then artists. And it depends on the size of the company, I would say, probably, and the dynamics they have.
I mean, team sizes are usually for going from a senior position to a lead position. That kind of makes sense just from the wording, and then supervisor being the next step in the kind of in the food chain, and then head of department. But obviously you could have even a head of department if the whole department is just one person. And we're so internally we're kind of in a very similar situation now with our marketing person, or a new marketing person that we are hiring. And so it's technically, we don't have anybody in this department. So it's going to be, either the lead or senior or specialist or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one show where I was working and I was the only artist in the show. So I was like, and it's like, you have freedom, sort of. Like, no one is going to tell you anything. You go to dailies, you deliver, they approve. So I was the artist, the lead. So
and then you also didn't care about how long the text is on your business card, right? Because
no, never cared about that, to be honest.
But then also kind of talking about these hierarchies. So in the sense of the type of work that you are doing, can it be that, or just to understand the hierarchy a little bit better of your position as an FX supervisor, or typically as an FX supervisor, would you only be in contact with the visual effects supervisor, or maybe the producer in-house? Or can it also be that on certain things you would be directly in communication with the client, or for example with the director client side? This can also happen.
Yeah. Most of the times, like I said, as an FX supervisor, you are invited to the client calls. Normally, you are not the one driving the conversation, but you might be there just in case the client has specific questions that the VFX supervisor might want an answer from you or the producer. But not normally the case that you're listening. If you want to say something, I have to raise my hand and just to clarify, because sometimes it's way easier to get firsthand information from the client, but normally it's just listening. It's the VFX supervisor and the producers mostly who drive those meetings with the clients. Yeah,
and going on set for you to understand the set or extract certain information, like positioning of or getting LiDAR scans or things like that, you would just request those from the VFX supervisor and not go on set yourself?
No. I've been only once on set. And it was actually because the FX supervisor couldn't go, and he said if I wanted to go. That was actually here in Toronto for the show The Strain. And they were doing an underwater explosion, and they had to film it practically. So special effects. So they had a tank, and they wanted to create a bubble, on a lake, which I think that we could have done easier in CG. But nonetheless, they did it. And I was amazed by the amount of people on set. But they filmed it, and I don't recall, to be honest, if it was used or not. It was pretty simple stuff, like an underwater explosion that kind of did a bulge.
Nice. Yeah, I think especially for younger people or other people that are not specifically working in visual effects, I think these little side tracks or side informations about what it could mean if they were to be working in this industry, I think that's super interesting to know, or can be powerful to know also in deciding on a career path, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would love to be on set more, but I don't think we need to. You will probably be going, oh, don't do it. I'll do it in, like, we'll save money. Let's do it in CG. Or no, the other way around.
We'll just write the prompt.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Let's not go there yet. Let's hold the horses. All right. So talking about mastering a craft, I know that when we were in contact before, you said that that's something that is kind of dear to you. Do you have some advice or some inputs, or what your personal definition of mastering a craft? What's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I'm gonna do like a side track on this. I say, and this is something that I talk a lot with my brother, like we did over 10,000 hours behind a bar. So we mastered the craft of talking to people and reading personalities. And that, I think, has helped us both, and me particularly on the industry, when I have to deal with the team, when I have to deal with the supervisor. Like, there is always something that you can pick up from other people's personalities that make you work better with them, Like, okay, if you work in a stressful situation, how do you deal with that? And I think those like 10,000 hours of dealing with clients, client facing, even though if it was just serving them drinks or food, and that's why I always, and I think more people do this too, recommend the younger generations of artists to go and work in a public facing industry before they get into VFX. Like, go to a McDonald's, go to any food chains or any bar or restaurants or anything where you can have interaction with people. That's
such a cool little anecdote, which is, to me, was a bit random, but it's absolutely true. But social skills, right?
Exactly. But like what I was saying earlier, it doesn't matter what the job is. It's people, it's deliveries, and it's constraints or challenges within what we have to do. So you have to have those social skills.
Yeah.
Or the better you are at developing these or helping others while you're working, the better it's going to be for everyone, for the team, and for the project. So, but going back to the proper questions, because you see that I can derail a lot. Maybe this, what I was saying earlier, the success and quality of whatever you do normally fits on happiness and well-being. And that's how I look at it. If you're happy, if you have a healthy life in general, you can perform better. I don't think this is a no-brainer, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to be happy doing what you do. And that's the key to get good at something. If you don't like what you push to do, you will never get good at it. You will never master anything. You have to love it in order to get good at it, right? So you are passionate, you do it. So go with passion. You'll have good results for sure. Yeah, and probably if you look in retrospective to anything that you have done in your past, like all the projects that you may have done, those that you're proudest of were the ones where you had the best moments of your life or you were happiest. That doesn't mean that you don't struggle while you're doing them. Mm-hmm. But also when you finish something, even if it's a struggle, you get a satisfaction, right? So you're proud of something. Maybe it cost me more than this other one, but I've managed to do it.
Yeah, and also kind of with this magic number that is so famous with the 10,000 hours of crafting something. That number, it doesn't just come from somewhere, right? There's a reason why this number actually manifested itself, and it's independent of what it is. It can be, and they compound, right? If you want to be good in or master multiple things, it's multiple times 10,000, right? And I think it's really important to just let this, I don't know, sink in, but also accept the fact that certain things cannot be rushed.
Yeah, time is a necessity for doing good things. You cannot rush art.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You cannot rush art. And also you cannot make your dreams, you cannot pull your dreams faster towards you by trying to take shortcuts. Because then you're constantly living in the future. And you're not able to enjoy the now. And being happy, you can only be happy now. I cannot be happy in 2 days, and I cannot change the fact that I was not happy 2 weeks ago. So all your life choices you need to make, and for me that's a long process of kind of just trying to enjoy the process and align everything so that you can be as happy as possible in the moment right now. And it doesn't need to be constant, right? Because we all also know that things that we struggled for, we actually value much more than if everything is just handed to you. And I just, when was it, about a week ago, I told one of my, I had a quick chat with one of my staff, and so we were discussing kind of value systems and the definition of success. It was an interesting quick discussion, and what I told him is that in the end, I would rather want to have a life full of struggle and maybe not reach what I would have wanted to reach in life. I would rather prefer this than having a life where everything is just effortless and you're successful, you have, and everything is beautiful, and you never have to struggle to get something. Because in the end, it's completely different end states, right? But being aware of this difference, and you can actually decide in the right in the moment how you want to interpret the now and how you want to live. I think that is a conscious decision of how you want to play it.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, like we said, you normally value what costs you. If it's like instant gratification, then just press another button, just get another like, get another. That's not something that maybe new generations are fed on this, and they might struggle to get better gratifications. We don't know.
But maybe the mechanisms may be faster to get gratifications with social media, right? You just mentioned the like button.
Yeah.
It's really fast to get the likes, but then the hurdle of actually you need to get a lot of likes because the individual like is small or insignificant, especially compared to other people, which makes the same social dynamic just a lot more complex and a lot more harder to manage. I don't think life is easier. I think it's just getting more and more complex, right?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be difficult though. we don't want the struggles, the constant struggle. We just want to have things that you have to care for, and those normally are the ones that you take some action to get them. Not they come to you. They come to you.
I'll get back to this point. A little bit later on, because I want to drill down on this a little bit later. But let's go back quickly to kind of your work in the industry. So when you were switching between companies, how did you adapt to the new pipelines? And pipeline meaning, for those that don't know this term, pipelines are basically kind of the company internal workbenches, or that are the tools and workflows that allow a company to produce a visual effects, for example, or an entire shot. I mean, so it's kind of the whole data flow from artist with those tools to the next one and next one and next one and so on.
I think it's getting easier in general. Companies normally have at least a basic workflow that is similar across all of them. In the effects department, probably might be the simplest, since we have a standard software, which is Houdini. So everywhere you go, you have the same software. It's just how do we input or output data from and to Houdini and Nuke, which would be the other one that normally FX people use. But those companies, or the majority of companies these days, have an intranet or some sort of platform where there is an onboarding set of instructions or videos, tutorials, and whatnot. So how do we do this in this company? So we normally just get there first. Some companies have a buddy system where you get another artist or another lead or another supervisor, depending on where you enter, that will sort of hold your hand and teach you the ropes the first week or two. And those people are the ones that you will be poking the first weeks, or when you are in trouble on a project or something. Okay, I don't know how you do this here. And then it's like it's super straightforward. It's nothing, I would say nothing to worry about, or something that's been streamlined across all companies, I would say. For sure, some companies have better workflows than others, but overall, I don't think it has never been an issue or something that I worry about when I move from company to company. If anything, what I try to do is to get on a call with someone, and we record that call. Nowadays, pretty much everyone uses Google Drive or Microsoft Teams, and you can have a recording of that there. So you just go back to it. So it's not only that you read documentation or you watch videos, but you have a call with someone and you ask the questions. Oh, how do you do this? How do you do that? Just to speed up the whole onboarding process.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. Yeah, we've been doing the same thing for internal tools and kind of internal workflows. But those videos were more, you could say, more for the artists. But then I specifically also was interested in kind of when switching companies for you, because you're on an FX, or let's say on a supervisor level. Is there the same amount, you would say, of documentation available? Because maybe the tools are much more specialized on your typical level of, let's say, expertise.
No, but even if you move as an FX supervisor, you still need to know the low-level details of how everything works, because you're going to be dealing with your artists, and you need to take over their work if you need that level of help. So it's not that you just look at the high-level meetings and what are the dynamics that I have to follow or the procedures to do this or that with the managers. You have to know everything. So it's, in that sense, it might be more complex. You have to know how you would work as an artist, and then you will have to know how you work as a lead in that new company.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it's not complicated. I mean, we normally adapt pretty easy to those things. I have written myself the documentation. I have to say that, like I was mentioning earlier, it gets easier with time because there are more tools and people share more on what's good, what's not good, what works, what doesn't. Like short videos work better than long videos. That type of things.
Yep. Okay. No, but what I'm taking from this is that that's something that you're not scared of that at all.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I like change. I always say change is for the good, always.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Because I was curious about this specifically. Not necessarily if it's possible. Obviously, it's possible to learn technical things, or let's say the specific workflows and tools and workflows and so on. But for a person that I guess doesn't like change too much, they would probably struggle with the fact that kind of, oh no, I will have to relearn everything, and this might prevent them from actually wanting to kind of moving on into another position at another company, right?
I'm not gonna lie. When you have to change companies, the first thing they go, oh shit, I have to learn a new pipeline. but it's like I have to learn a new pipeline. I have to talk to new people. There is that, but it's just a second. Then like I hate change when I'm good in a place. If you know what I mean. It's like, okay, I need to move because the industry sucks.
Yeah.
And I have to leave behind this, which is so good, for example.
Yeah. All right. Makes absolute sense. Sweet. So let's also change a tiny little bit the direction here again. So when we were in contact, one of the terms that you mentioned, and I've known the term for quite some time, and I just wanted to address it, and it's the so-called pixel fucking. And I love the term because it's perfect. And can you give us a little bit of a rundown what it means in the context of visual effects and the implications of it?
Oh yeah, I'll start with implications. The implications is unnecessary work and a waste of money for the companies. Those are like 100% sure. That's what happened. And pixel fucking normally is referred to notes that are given just for the sake of giving notes. Like, that as an artist or as a supervisor, that no one is gonna see that because it's gonna be occluded by another element, because it's going to be the focus in the background, or because it doesn't affect what the shot is trying to tell in the story, but they keep going on and on and on and on around that element. And you go like, okay, this is just wasting everybody's money. And I keep thinking on that, like, especially nowadays that most of the calls are online with the work from home, hybrid and whatnot. And you have a meeting with endless amount of artists and coordinators and producers and supervisors, and you have people going around the same thing. So like, how much is this meeting costing? How much is this costing every time that we have to present the same thing for a really minor change that the audience is not going to notice, that people are going to watch in their phones?
Yeah.
So that's kind of pixel fucking. And I think yesterday or 2 days ago, there was an online video that had a long definition with a bunch of examples on pixel fucking. I'll send you the link.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll definitely include this in the description.
Yeah, I think it's called BFX Are You Okay? And it's a spot on description of the current state of the industry.
I'm going to be very interested to see that. But so how would you bring this up, especially if this feedback comes from the client side? I mean, internal, sure, you can maybe be a little bit more blunt and so on and kind of address these things. It's also not for everybody, right, to address those things. But then, and that's maybe not with the same term, but the problem is extremely common in the creative industries in general. So what's your advice on, or do you have maybe some examples on how to bring this even up in a nice manner?
I think the best way that a supervisor can deal with the pixel fucking is trying to illustrate what doing the changes might imply. And maybe it's not even the supervisor, it's also the producer saying, okay, this is costing this much money. Maybe it's something that you want to consider doing it in a different way. Maybe the problem is that we're trying to solve something that cannot be solved by just doing it that way. And we have to look if there is another alternative of presenting the work. It's a complicated one when it comes from the client, because art is subjective, right? And what some people have in their heads, you might be able to interpret and deliver, but sometimes they don't even know. I think it's on that video I was mentioning, they say, I will know when I see it.
Yeah.
And you go, okay. So just keep one more round. And you go like, one more round is gonna cost like, and I always say this to the cost of effects. It's like an artist have to do something, have to be seen by a lead, then a supervisor. I mean, if that is the hierarchy, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have to review it multiple times before we present it to the client. And those are multiple meetings that have to happen. And this is time for everyone involved in those meetings. So that's money getting burned.
Yeah.
If what we're trying to achieve wasn't needed in the first place. It's not giving anything to the story. It's not moving the story forward. That's an element that is in the background in that corner that might be even fixable in comp without having to do another round of effects and lighting. So there's so many layers of artistry that can be burned along the way.
How would you say could this be addressed. I'm just kind of from a workflow point of view. I was just trying to think of a solution for this, and one of the approaches that I would recommend, because just as a thought experiment, is if you show the shot to a person that is absolutely not involved in the planning of the shot, and then you play it 3 times or so, and then you have a list of questions. Did you see this, 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 and this? And if they are not aware of what you just addressed, it doesn't matter. But I think it would be really important that the person is absolutely it's completely independent of the of not being involved in the actual production and of the notes, obviously.
I think that one important thing when we do presentations, like from an artist to the leaders to the supervisors, is that the artists, we try to encourage people to describe as much as they can what they have done from version to version, so we know what's changed. And the people that are going to be on those meetings reviewing the work know what have changed. They don't have to ask, which is like another way back and forth of question. What am I looking at? That type of thing. The problem is that we have so many these days. We have so many layers of reviews. Like, for example, we dealing with the client that has a VFX supervisor, and then we have our VFX supervisor in-house, and then we have the FX supervisor in this case, right? And then we have the lead. So for the work from the artist to get to the client supervisor, he has to go through 4 different steps. But then there is a director or the studio review. They might also have a say on whatever we've done. So if you look at Godzilla Minus Zero, I don't know if you've seen that. I believe it's online now. At least there might be something similar to what they presented in the Oscars Bake Off. They did that film with an amazing small team. And
I just heard it was like 35 people or so. But
something like that.
Extremely efficient.
Exactly. And the way that they cut the middleman was the director, the VFX supervisor, and he was sitting across the artist and in constant communication. So there would be no middleman. It's too many cooks.
Yeah. Thing. Yeah. I wasn't aware of this detail. I was just, when seeing the effects, I didn't see the movie, but I just looked into a couple of handful of breakdowns or so, and then somebody told me there were just about 35 people, and just like, how would they be able to do that? But I didn't know this detail, but yeah, makes sense.
It's a wonderful movie, though. It's not about Godzilla.
Nice. Don't spoil it. Very cool. But kind of piggybacking on this with the whole pixel fucking topic and inefficiencies. Obviously, if you then continue to work in that mode, obviously, eventually you're getting to this famous topic of burnout. And here, I'm just curious. For you, I would like to get your opinion on it. And what are the indicators of this disbalance between a healthy and an unhealthy passion for work also? So it's a little bit a layered question. It's not necessarily the work itself, or let's say the pressure from the company that can lead to a burnout. But there's a little twist to this question of with the passion for the work, so that the person pushing him or herself too strongly because of perfectionism. What's your opinion about this?
I think the minute that you start sort of dreaming, or more than dreaming, having nightmares about your work, so you are in bed and you maybe sleeping or maybe not sleeping, you're just thinking, that shot, that other shot, I cannot, trying to figure out these things or these mechanics or dynamics at work. I think that's bad. Like, you have to be able to separate work and life. I would say no one I know does that in the VFX industry. I haven't found a person in the VFX industry that has a super nice work-life balance. It normally is a struggle. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that we take, like you were saying, you get too passionate about what we do, and we get attached too much to what we do. So our life becomes focused or solely our work. We don't have a life, we have just work. And we engage with people from work. We don't have friends outside work. It's like we live for work. And that's I would say, the first symptom of, okay, there is something wrong. So we have to find alternatives, or we have to find ways of putting things in order. Like your family has to be first. Your friends outside work should be, or you should have some friends outside work. You should have a hobby, something that is not work. I'm talking about from experience, because I was burned out a couple of times in recent years, and I pick up baking. So I bake, and I love it when I bake. It's like my mind goes in a completely different state, and I have the joy of seeing people eating my breads, for example. So I'm not giving away my passion for work. I'm just putting it in the right place. That's work. And it doesn't mean that you have to not work after hours. You can choose when you want to dedicate the time for work, but you have to have something else. You cannot just have your work. I think that's the first indication that something is wrong, because you just live for work. And say, oh, it's your passion, it's your hobby, so you love it, so you stay endless hours, you work Saturdays, Sundays. No, you have to stop. It has to stop. And the problem is that since COVID, and COVID gave us work from home, which is amazing. Like before COVID, we didn't have that option. Oh no, it's impossible. The clients, legalities, and COVID happens. Everybody's working the week after. So it's possible. And then you have hybrid mode, right? And it's up to everyone. Some people love working home. Some people love working in the office. Some people love the hybrid. I'm a people person. I need to touch people. So I like to go to an office and be at least interacting with people, not constantly on Teams, Zoom, Google Meet calls. That's something that not my jam, so to speak. But you need to find things outside work, basically. You just have to have a balance. Like the work-life balance, I read somewhere, something that destroyed my work-life balance idea. There is no such thing. There is work, and then life happens around work. You always have to work. There is no way you can escape work, because you need the money to do things in life, right? So
yeah, absolutely. And this indicator you mentioned before I found really, really interesting. This notion of when you start to dream about work, and one level up from that is if you start to get nightmares about work. I think that concept, I never heard of that, but I know both of these states myself very well. But to see that as a conscious indicator I think that's super precious to know this. And I'm going to memorize this definitely, but kind of continuing on that, can you give us some more advice on other similar types of advice for recognizing or distinguishing between different states, or addressing the different typical types of stress factors? So it can be kind of for work, family, social media, kind of type of exposures. But what would you say are typical other good indicators for, let's say, for stress, or precursors, or signs for an upcoming burnout?
Yep. Edginess. When you are edgy in your answers to people that you love, like in my case, for example, my wife or my kids, when I sometimes I have noticed myself like getting annoyed by things that they do or things that they say to me, and I'm like, okay, that's me being stressed, taking it badly, or answering incorrectly when I should just be chill. It's, putting work ahead of the loved ones. That's really, you said a good indicator. I'll say this is a bad indicator of how things shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So the minute that you start seeing this, I mean, you have to be able to recognize that you're doing it that way. But that's the sad part. When you do it, then you go like, fuck, I have a problem.
Yeah. Super important points. But on the positive side, with your work in general as a professional, what would you miss if you were working outside of VFX or outside of what you are currently doing? So what's the stuff you absolutely love in your job and why you're kind of motivated to get up in the morning?
And there's a bunch of things. I'm a constant learner. I think that the industry forces you, and if you want to succeed, or at least from my point of view, if you want to be good in this industry, the VFX or any industry related to media technology, you have to be thriving on learning. You have to be keeping an eye on new things and be willing to learn new things, because this is a constant learning process. You cannot be stagnated on all techniques, all software, all things are moving like so fast. These days, even with the AI, they are moving even faster. Right? So you have to adapt, and in order to adapt and not be caught behind, you have to learn. And that's kind of what fools me. And I like to do that. I like to learn new things. Like, okay, real time, unreal. Okay, my head is, okay, I'm going there.
So to you, that would be, for example, if you have the feeling that you're stagnating at a certain workplace and you're trying to, let's say, go into a new direction, but they're saying, yeah, we cannot do that. That would be, for you, that would be a reason to eventually leave the company and move on to go in a different direction.
At first, I don't like to leave places. I could say that I've been happy in 99% of the places I work with, and I met great people everywhere. And if all the companies would still exist and don't anymore, I'm sure people will be happy to have me back. I kind of proud of saying that. Like, people always let the door open whenever I left.
Yeah.
So the reason that you leave sometimes is family reasons, personal reasons. Like when we went back from the UK to Spain, it was because our first daughter was born, so we have to move back. When we went from Spain to Canada, it was because we thought, okay, our kids are old enough to experience a different world. So we left the companies behind. I left Next Limit and moved to Toronto. So but we look for challenges. And maybe part of the reason that we're moving so much or we're doing this is also because my wife is in a similar mindset, and we like change. But there is so much to learn and so many cool people that you will meet along the way. One of the things I also love from the industry is how many talented people you come across from place to place. I cannot but just like open my mouth and with some people I've met, I'm like, this is a genius. Technically or artistically. Yeah.
No, I agree. But also, I mean, it sounds like the perfect match that you have with your wife working in a, let's say, pretty much the same industry or very, very similar types of jobs, you could say, and also having very similar interests. And I would say that's rare, but also, I mean, I'm this may be an assumption, but it's definitely something that is a huge plus on the social side to be in a, let's say, marriage or in a relationship with somebody that really understands this side of passion and kind of the commitment to this, you could say, art form in work. And because I think in visual effects goes way beyond the standard job.
Yeah, I'll say it's good, and it's also a curse, because our conversations sometimes revolve around the same topics, and if you're stressed, you dump it on the other. I mean, yeah, we help each other, but at the same time, it's like, oh God, same topic.
Yeah, no, fair.
Yeah. So sometimes I wish I was like in a different industry. We've been, and there was a point where I was at Next Limit, which I wasn't like fully VFX deep production. I was just consulting clients or traveling for events and talking about the software and doing demos, right? We came across in a bunch of places while I was doing that. And then my wife left the industry for a few years. She became a teacher, and she was teaching English at schools. It was only when she came back when we moved to Canada, she went back to the industry. So we had our little break-ish.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, because the whole thing with kind of moving from place to place together, or also geographically, but also within the industry. When we were in contact just a few days ago, you mentioned this really nice term, the nomad life. And can you elaborate a little bit more on this nomad life and what the implications are regarding that?
Yeah, I guess because I was born in an island and grew up close to the port, I saw people coming and going. So for me, that was kind of normal in a way, like seeing people coming and going. That doesn't mean that people in the island normally leave, which is kind of quite the opposite. I have all my family there. I'm the only one that left the island. I have all my friends from my childhood there. No one left the island. So there's different mentalities. I look at the port as a kind of a way to escape or explore, right? For the family, we thought that it was great to give the kids different perspectives of the world. So we never care about where work was. We will find work where we think that we're going to a cool place for them to be. And that has some implications. Like, for example, now me and my wife, we both have aging parents. And I'm lucky that I have 3 siblings that take care of my parents. And I couldn't be more grateful or thankful because I cannot be there, but they are. And I know they are the best people to be around them. Yeah. And my wife is the same. Anytime that her parents have an issue, she has a brother, but she flies back to Spain for a few weeks whenever there is an issue. And that's a problem if you are a nomad, that you have your family somewhere else in the world. Same with friends. You see them occasionally from time to time, for sure. Now we have WhatsApp, we have technologies, and we can be in contact at one click. I was in the islands. I was telling people, I'm just one click away. I don't know. We are that close and that far apart at the same time. On the positive side, our daughters now, that we have one living with us here in Toronto, the other one is studying in Vancouver. They couldn't be more different in a way, right? One is saying that, I will stay in Vancouver, I will go to the States. The other one is going to Montreal, or we'll go to Sydney, we'll go to New Zealand. So in their mind already, there is a world to explore. And I think that's what we gave them by like moving so much or not settling in a single place. And they have friends, very good friends here, and they just like to explore. So the nomad, it's a choice. It's a great way, I'll say, to feel part of a global world these days. Like, I mean, I like it that way. I don't like to think about barriers or countries, or we are not going to get political, but
there's a citizen of the world, right? Not of a country. Yeah. I love this analogy basically that you had, that when growing up, being close to a port, seeing that port not only literally for transport, but also as a metaphor for your own way how to live on the planet, where to work and so on. So it wasn't restricting, but you saw like the significance or the meaning of the port in itself. And I'm curious about this because you just mentioned you kind of quite consciously seem to have passed this on also to your children, and also focusing on the positive sides, the positive aspects of this notion, because some children are miserable when they are just moving from country to country if they are not taught what the positive aspects are. But in your case, or in the case of you and your wife, would you say this was also something that was passed on to you from your parents consciously, or was this something that you would say you just picked up naturally?
No, I think it was naturally. The moving away from at different levels, like my parents are from, and this is sort of a joke, the island is small. My parents are from the center of the island. They emigrated, quotes, to the city, which is like 15 minutes away. In the case of my wife, they are from the center of Spain, and they emigrated to Barcelona, which is in the coast, also a port. So maybe like the living surrounded by a multicultural atmosphere helped But I wouldn't say our parents enforce us or put that in our heads.
Yeah, it seems to be like a natural process that is not, it was naturally given to you and not something that has necessarily, you had to be pushed into. Because a lot of people say, oh, going to another country, oh no, I'm scared. And that would actually also have my next question, kind of by having lived in multiple cultural contexts and obviously also having been in contact with a lot of people, a lot of talent from other cultures, what has this taught you as a human being?
I think I will keep going back to this. We are all human. We just need to be kind with each other. I have examples of people that I work with that I didn't know how to interact with them at first because they were from different cultures. And then we end up being super close friends. It's just like we all have something in common. We just need to find what it is. Just be kind and be gentle with people when you work. Like I said to everyone, you don't know nothing about the person that you are working with or you have to interact with. Just be kind. You don't know what that person is going through. If it's positive, if it's negative, you don't know nothing. You just see their face, or these days you just chat with them, and then you get the communication, and it's like, oh, this person is aggressive, this is aggressive, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, just chill for a sec. What's going on? Just analyze the context. If you can find more information, and then you will get to a common ground, and then you'll be buddies and drinking together.
Yeah. Obviously, I share a lot of the same experiences, but just addressing this also interculturally, don't assume anything independent of the culture of this, let's say, this other culture. And obviously then on top of that, the individual.
Yeah, 100%. Assuming is the worst.
Yeah. And it's
like
it's the
topics.
beginning of a lot of evil, right?
Yeah. It's like, what's the word? It's not topic, it's stereotypes, right?
Yeah.
And I used to, that's a digression, I used to write little like sort of haikus a while back, and I wrote one that was no tags, because I didn't like tagging people. Like I hate when you get someone a tag, or we see in the media like tagging. I'll send you that one. It's a stupid thing, but it's like, you see someone and someone is going to put a label to that type of person or to that person. And you go like, why? Don't.
Yeah, don't. At least not right at the beginning.
Just get to know the person.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go again in a slightly different direction and talk a bit about 3D environments in general. And I'm curious, because you mentioned some consultancy before, and also in the context of your work at Next Limit together with RealFlow, I would assume that you've seen quite a lot of projects in film, but maybe also otherwise, where the software was used. So what was your role in these projects? Or can you give us a little bit of what was your interaction with the software, with clients, with projects in this context?
Yep. I joined Next Limit. Let me just try to recall correctly. I think it was 2007, 8, something like that. And they had already won the Technical Achievement Award. So I wasn't proud of it. I was proud that they got it, because I had really good friends in that company. I actually worked with Angel Tena, the lead developer, in 1999. When I was an intern, he was in the company. I was being an intern. And that's how I got actually in touch with Next Limit in the first place.
I see.
When I was there, probably the most recognizable projects that we could talk about would be Spanish director that just directed The Society of the Snow. You know, the film that was last year about the Uruguayan plane that crashed in the Andes and they survived.
Yes, I know which one.
Yeah,
yes.
Jay Bajona, I think is the name. He was directing The Impossible with Naomi Watts and Ewan McGregor and Tom Holland, I think it was. So El Ranchito in Madrid had to do the Thailand tsunami flooding with a lot of destruction, blah, blah, blah. So we were doing some internal tests with the version that we were about to release for Real Flow that year. We were testing both. We were testing the fluids and we were testing the body dynamics that we were working on. That was super cool, but it wasn't. What's the word?
Was it the Caronte solver?
Yeah, Caronte solver. Yeah. It was amazing, super precise, but it wasn't. Oh, I forgot the English word. Like it wouldn't give you the same result in every iteration.
Yeah, some kind of consistency.
Yeah, there's a specific term, but anyway, we were doing tests for that. So I had a lot of internal tests that we were running at the Next Limit office for that film. And there was one of the guys I used to work there, Jorge Alex, ended up working as a freelance for El Ranchito but there was minor things, splashes. And the way that they ended up doing it was they filmed in a massive water tank, like 300 meters, I think it was. No, that's too big.
Wow.
That cannot be 300 meters. It was in Valencia. I think the FX guide did a really good article about that. Ian Fales and John Montgomery, I think, were the ones running that article back then. That was one of the projects that we were collaborating with El Ranchito. And then there was one for Mirada with Andy Cochrane and John Fragomeni, I think they were, called Disney World of Color. So we had the new technology at the time that would generate meshes at render time for the fluids. It was called the Real Flow Render Kit. And we had it for Houdini just because they were pushing from Mirada in LA. And so there was a kind of like beta testing. They were beta testing, pushing it while they were doing that show. That was for a new park. I don't know if it was the Anaheim Disney Park. They would have these color fountains and they would have like all the Disney characters. They had like Buzz Lightyear and Mickey Mouse and whatnot. It's a nice commercial that they end up doing. So they were doing a 3D version of what it was going to be in the park. So I was consulting. I remember being at 2-3 in the morning, just chatting with Andy Cochrane in LA, just to make sure that things were running, and then just feeding back that information to the programmers the day after. I'm doing some little tests myself if there was anything to test. But mostly in that one, we didn't do that much in-house. It was mostly consulting for them just to make sure that things were working. Same thing with Mr. X. When they were doing Resident Evil, they had some floods in Manhattan and thing in Russia, like super cool. You can still get them online from the Mr. X channels. And we were just, they will send us the scenes and we will do, or they would send us the geometry and we will run simulations with the new technology that we were putting, which at that time, we had the first iteration of our large-scale solver, which wasn't a flip solver. It was using the LBM lattice Boltzmann that the CFD that Next Limit had was using. That CFD that got then sold to Dassault Systems. But Real Flow, before they have a flip, we had that.
I see. I didn't know that.
So we tried the lattice Boltzmann and then we ditched that and did it with flip. Because everybody was doing flip, or Naiad came, and then it was Houdini also doing flip. But those were maybe the 3 projects that I had in mind closely. Maybe The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Sometimes we talk to Mark Stasiuk and Fusion Seas in LA, but that was more pretty much before my time. Because remember, he was also the one pushing for the spectrum waves to be, or the Tessendorfs to be implemented in Real Flow, but that was before I arrived. Yeah.
Actually, the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, I watched this not too long ago. I rewatched it. It's a really, really good movie. And at the beginning, there's this animation with kind of a black fluid with a character. It looks a little bit oily, but also a little bit artsy, with a character moving and the face and so on. So
and a keyboard, right? There's a keyboard with the liquid going through over the keyboard, I think. Is it the intro of the film, maybe?
I think it's at the intro, yeah. But it's really impressive. And also because this was a couple of years back when this was produced.
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch. I mean, we had some films, like animated films. I remember going to Armen Animation in Bristol. They were doing the... I don't even remember the title. It was like a one with a whale and a pirate ship, something. And there were a lot of back and forth in the office. When there were a cool project, we would be involved with the client, just talking. Oh, the Mill, also in London, during Sinbad thing, they were doing a huge, Sinbad, and then Nayat also a film. Anyway, lots of cool projects during those. I was 7 years there, though.
I mean, that's so cool to see kind of the software you're developing being used directly on Hollywood productions and in some of the best commercials, and being able to be there as a strategic advisor or to consultancy on the projects for clients. I mean, this must have been extremely satisfying.
It was, and not only for me, but the whole team. I think we had an amazing development team, and everyone in the office would love when we put together the client's reel at the end of the year. That was one of our highlights, like, putting this together, like, wow, they did this, they did that. Anytime that we learn about something that we hadn't seen being done with RealFlow, but someone sent us the link, we just did this, and we would be like, wow, that's fantastic. Like, they're pushing it to the limit. Yeah, that was insane.
To the next limit, right? Oh, that's so cool. And I mean, just a tiny little anecdote. I just had started in architecture. So I started my studies in 2001. And in the second year, I think it must have been 2002, we actually had kind of we were able to travel to different locations as 1 week per semester. Just it was guided tours and so on and so on. So in 2002, we went to Spain, and I'm not sure where it was, but I think it was in Sevilla. I'm not sure. Anyway, we were able to go and see the different types of architecture, different famous places, and one of them was the Museum of Juan Miró. And in that museum, something caught my eye, and I was absolutely fascinated. So it's a huge 5 by 5 by 5 meter glass cube, you could say. So it's basically, what would that be, 15 by 15 by 15 feet approximately. And inside there was a couple of leaves, abstract leaves that were kind of hung in space. And there was a quicksilver fountain, just basically pumping liquid quicksilver over these leaves. And so everything would be kind of floaty a little bit. And at the bottom, there's this pool that just collects these couple of liters, couple of gallons of quicksilver. So that in itself is extremely expensive. And so I was just running, and I was absolutely mesmerized by seeing this metal flow over these leaves and just dribbling down on all of the sides. And that was actually, to me, the inspiration of wanting to do one of the next kind of arts project that we had for the arts classes, to do that in RealFlow. And so I checked what are the fluid dynamics tools that are on the market, and I was aware of, there's RealFlow. And I checked out the pricing, and they did indeed have a student version. And I looked at the price and I was like, okay, it's impossible to afford this for me. And so I wrote them an email, kind of, are there some options of, I don't know, what can we do? I would really love to do this project. And so they said, I got an email back from Next Limit, and they basically said, what can you pay? And as I did my calculations with my own finances, and I said, I can pay this amount. And it's like not nothing, but I can pay this amount. And they said, that's good. Here's a license. And that was, to me, just mind-blowing, just to see this interaction with a client that cannot, just being helped, not being in the situation where I can afford to get a proper license, but also willing to go this extra step and not just try and crack the software. And to me, that was one of the best interactions with any tech support I ever had. And so to me, this is why I hold Next Limit still very dear in my heart.
That's a good one. Yeah. We always try to help, like sort of democratize the...
Yeah.
I was a big advocate for free student learning tools.
Yeah.
To this date, I will still say that the SPA solver that RealFlow had, haven't seen it anywhere else. Houdini is amazing, but the detail that I could get with RealFlow in no time, I haven't matched it anywhere. Haven't seen it.
It's an amazing piece of software, absolutely. Yeah, so talking about fluids, tell us a little bit more about your work that deals with 3D environments in general.
In FX, I would say that these days, fluid is just a part of the work that we end up doing with the environments. In recent project, we had to do, which again, sometimes depending on the company, might not have to be done by FX, can be done by the environment department or the CFX department. But we have been doing grass, trees, soil movements, clouds. If they are dynamic, might make more sense for an FX artist to do the clouds generation rather than the environment populating static bank, right? For sure, fluids, any water, waves, sea extensions, those are going to end up being in FX. But those also could be going, depending on the company, if they have, for example, Houdini in their pipeline, and there are tools created from the FX department for the environment team to do like generic background stuff. They don't necessarily have to be on an FX artist pile. So it's getting more and more that we see, those type of like vegetation being in FX, mostly because it's Houdini, and Houdini technical artists are not that easy to find on other departments. They normally end up in FX, not even in CFX. I mean, CFX for sure, but they might be going for muscles or cloth or things that are not pure simulations.
Yeah. Fair enough. Or you're kind of using pre-existing frameworks like for muscle and skin deformation and so on. They have specific kind of sub-tools, right? So what are in general, your personal favorite effects to work with? Is it fluids, or maybe can you give us a few shots that you really loved working on?
I don't like effects. No, kidding. It's definitely fluids. I mean, I grew up in an island surrounded by water. It has to be water. It couldn't be anything else. And the thing that I enjoy the most is the process of doing, like massaging, like art directing the fluids when I see them in the viewport rather than when I see them rendered. Like when you see things rendered, motion blur, you lose it. I love it. I love a nice splash or nice foamy, tenderly with surface tension structure. Fun enough, I am taking endless amount of pictures of my bread, of the bread, but of the dough when it's building the bread, like all the organic structures. And this is kind of what I look like when I'm doing water. Like if there is a splash, I like to see that curve and then bubbly and then like all the little lines in between the fluid. I'm saying water, it could be blood. I love doing gore stuff. I have a really good friend who is the gore master, Carlos Langenbeck. Shout out to him. He works at Herne Hill here in Toronto now, where we used to work together at Mr. X. And we love seeing those like massive cats and splashes. I saw a really good breakdown on Shogun, the series. I can't remember the company that did it, but shout out to them. That looked amazing. Like the way they cut the horses and the characters. Those type of things, I love them. And I have a friend that had to suffer me working next to him at Mr. X, and he gave me the stamp of disgusting artist. Because on this train, I had to do the simulations where the vampire was transferring the power of the master to another character. So it was like a puking mouth to mouth. So I was Googling puke references. So I would get a lot of images of videos, and he was looking at my screen going like, what the hell are you doing? I love those shots. So much fun.
I've seen this actually multiple times. Just people because there's not enough references of pictures online. And yes, it can be extremely gory for certain things, that actually people are kind of doing their own research on all types of liquids and blood simulation spatters, and actually simulating them using whichever tool to create even textures and all of those things. So it's really a creative workflow, right?
Mm-hmm. I remember one because when I was doing my presentation for the Anime Festival a couple of weeks ago, I kind of dug into my old archives, and I found really, really old stuff from when I was working in X-Men for MPC back in 2005, I think it was. I found my own sketches that I love doing sketches of, more than sketches, it's the storyboard of the shots I'm working. And when I'm at work at the company, or when I used to do shots, I put it on the wall next to me. So I will have those little strings of all my shots. So rather than having to go to shot grid or whatever it's called now, I will look to the wall. Oh, that's shot, this one and this one. But it will be my own drawing of the shot and my own storyboard. So I found the ones that I did for X-Men with Magneto sitting on the floor and the water going up to the ceiling. That was one of my first simulations. And the one with the Stanley and the hose going anti-gravity, which was Real Flow version 3. Like, insane back in the day. That was actually my first Real Flow experience. I learned Real Flow on a 2-day course at Next Limit.
Wow.
And then I went to MPC to work with Real Flow. Yeah.
You were literally thrown into cold digital water.
Yeah. And they love it. They're like, oh, yeah, you're the guy. You're the water guy. And then I had one, like you were saying, creative ones when I was at Cinesite on Harry Potter's. I had to do a lot of snow, but also rain. And someone there, I think his name was Chad, but I can't remember the surname. He had what they called the Guinness Pass, which was a texture with just a couple of noises, and he made it. And that will go in the background. So you will render that, like multiple layers of that, and that will be like the hazy rain in the background. So those were like the creative ways that people had to give the sense of volume back in the days. I don't know if anyone is using that type of tricks. Probably comp, they can do it. But we used to render those like separate layers or feed those to comp.
Yeah, it makes sense, because also depending on the size of the, the fluid caches, they can get so big that you cannot sim everything in full 3D, and you basically have to slice it or
No.
Yeah.
This, because I had the similar one. In this case, it was I think it's a Mad-Eye Moody, the character. He's like stomping on some puddle in the foreground, and then you see like the rain. So I was doing the rain like in the very foreground, maybe midground, and then after that there will be like a bunch of renders of texture, like line up. And when I was doing the Netflix Valhalla Vikings, we were like simulating actual chunks of rain, chunks of volumetrics. So like 20 years later, right? So it's different capabilities.
Yeah. Back in the day, obviously, when I had a Real Flow license myself, I played a lot with fluid dynamics. And one of the things, obviously, I found must be incredibly hard, or back in the day, 20 years ago, was kind of for individual droplets, or in general, the art direction of how a wave is supposed to move and crash and all of those things. But one of the things that I got more aware of was when having worked at Scanline, was that the whole particulate matter and kind of the little particles that are also part of the water, which are also moving in or with the fluid, and that together with the combination also with the shader, with, subsurface scattering and all of those millions of little particles that are floating and part of the volume, just to bring everything together, not just the form and kind of the speed of the animation, but also the how do you shade the mist and the fog and the evaporation and everything then together in compositing, so that it, for the eye, in the end, it looks absolutely photoreal. There's so many aspects to that.
Oh yeah, insane.
And then
sounds to scale though. That's the key in all you do there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And then when was it? About a month ago, maybe 5 weeks ago, I was at listening to a presentation by one of the VFX supervisors from Weta, and he was talking about some of Weta's water simulations, and they are even, it's just like mind-blowing, going so far as simulating based on actual research of the different types of ocean. Let's say parts of oceans have different types of water because of different temperatures, because of different pH levels, because of different levels of how much salt you have. And everything influences also the scattering behavior of the light within the water volume. And they even did some actual diving tests of having different colored plastic pipes, where you have the whole spectrum, the rainbow color spectrum of all colors, and then having divers actually in the different types of water they needed to render dive, and then after every couple of meters taking a photograph of how the color actually looks, and then you suddenly realize at a certain depth of 30 feet or 10 meters, something like that, suddenly most of the colors are starting to fade in towards gray, but the orange or the greens are super intense. And they're simulating all of this stuff. It's like mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing, and how far they go with that stuff, right?
They can do it.
They can do it, but I know that I just know they had a research that was kind of specialized in all of those things, but yeah, it's absolutely mind blowing.
If anyone can do it, they can do it. They and ILP,
yes,
I would say.
Yeah.
ILP also has amazing water streams these days, and I think there's a company also in Vancouver that's some cool stuff. Stormborn, something like that.
Yeah, I worked together with some of those people at Scanline, and they then started their own company, which is Stormborn.
Yeah, Scanline, of course.
Obviously, specialists just in fluids, right? So which is also some amazing work.
I should start my own one.
Yes. How about we talk a little bit about future and AI?
Ooh, hot potato.
Yes, and because I just wanted to address it because I loved the LinkedIn article or the LinkedIn post which you published a couple of weeks ago, kind of addressing those topics. And maybe you can give us a tiny little bit of, like for those that don't know the article, which will probably be a lot of people, just kind of a short overview of the post, and then what type of feedback did you get over the weeks?
Yeah, sure. I think that was a post that I felt that I had to write, or with all that is going on and seeing so many people losing their jobs and looking at the future with uncertainty. I'm there myself. So it's like we are all kind of hanging around, just hoping for the best, starting to think that 2024 is a lost year in the industry, and just wondering what do we do? Is there going to be an industry after this? Shall we move around? Like, is AI going to take over and all that, right? And like I said, I like to keep an eye on new trends, new technologies. I like to experiment. I have tried a few of those AI tools myself, and the post wasn't just simply AI, but there were some, I think, interesting or important points on AI there. And probably the takeaway is we humans, we're going to like things done by humans, and no tool is going to replace a human. Tools are going to be there to help us with or without AI. And AI tools will be great. And we already have some in the industry. We use some in compositing for a long time. And we're going to be anything that is boring, repetitive, can be automated, then it's not for a human. That can be done by a machine. But any creative input, it will always be better coming from a human. I don't think no one has a doubt about that. So as long as we consider ourselves artists and people willing to do art, I think we are not going to be replaced by a machine. And the future is bright, in quotes. I don't know if we're going to say the future is bright. My perspective on what's coming after this wave is that things are going to change. The industry won't be the same. We're going to have to adapt. We will adapt. And we will still have good jobs, fun people to have fun with at work. So just trying to be positive because we have to. And because I think that it will be like that. If it was like, oh shit, we're doomed, I wouldn't have written that post.
Yeah. No, I really love this sense of positivity, of yes, there is hope. And sure, it's a bit of a bumpy road, but there's so many posts that are kind of just clickbaity. And obviously on the business side, in which direction AI is being developed as kind of to maximize profits and to reach as many people as possible to create videos for all sorts of like very boring applications and so on. But having seen and read your article, it was like refreshing to see the positivity. And also, just it's a simple, positive, well-written article that just gives a lot of hope. And what was the feedback which you got?
I think overall it was really good. People were probably thinking the same things, just didn't have the will to write them down or share it. But many people brought to me, oh, that's exactly what I was thinking. Thank you for just giving me positive reinforcement on how things can be right now. Yeah, it was very positive. I was also happy to see that I might have helped people, which is kind of my normally will. I like to help people. I'm gonna give you another tip. When I was a kid, I saw my dad. My dad had a restaurant, and I would go and stay with him late at night, just when he was just wrapping up the things. He will take the remaining food that he had from the day and just heat it up, go outside and feed the homeless around the market. So this is kind of where what I grew up seeing. Like I said, it was a port. It was people from everywhere, and we had immigration, like a lot in the islands. I like to help people. I like to be kind to people. And if I see that people are struggling, I'm also struggling. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling what others are feeling. Can I express it, or can I just say something to help people? So that's kind of why I did it. And I think that the reaction was in that same line. Oh, people were like, oh, thank you for writing this. It helped me. And I felt like, okay, that's kind of the point. I thought that I had to say because, and this is something that I say to some people that I know for a long time, maybe it's our responsibility because we've been in the industry for 25 years now. And there is a lot of new people getting into the industry that are probably the most impacted. Like junior artists, mid artists that are just 1, 2 years, 3 years in the industry and thinking, okay, did I choose the wrong path?
Yeah. I've seen this train of thought. I've seen this very often, and I've also had it with people that are thinking to even start to go into an education. Multiple cases actually that say, I would love to, I don't know, start creating models, 3D models, start to texture and so on. But then considering the tools that are, or the direction of some of the tools just to create 3D models, like, you're starting to consider, should I really go in this direction? So the threat is real, but it's just going to change things. I see this more, and also kind of seeing the hope in the sense of if you may have more tools for general audience content, like auto-generated video for YouTube, for TikTok, whatever it is, but still the next level after that in serious entertainment, the quality that people desire from the next level or from kind of cinematic level or triple A or quadruple A types of games is just going to still and forever be going to push beyond mainstream technology. And this in itself is this has always been the case, right?
Yep, I agree. There is space for AI, I think. There is space for AI content, AI, any tools that we see that are generating generative AI. We can discuss the legality, the ethics of how they train their models and whatnot. That's a different topic. But if you look at pure industry or like if there is a pie in which we have streaming services, the YouTube services, theatrical releases, there will be, I'm pretty sure there will be like a sliver there for AI content and people will consume it. There will be a market for them. Like people look at TikToks and doom scroll on those. So I'm pretty sure there will be something like that.
Yeah. And it might even be the majority of the pie chart. It might be, right?
Could be.
I just know for myself, I wouldn't be happy working on this. I want to push the envelope, right?
The examples I put on the article might be the things that I kind of like to see from the creator perspective, how to use the tool. And I still don't fully buy it. Like I think it's that guy, Martin Nevelon, I think is the name. He's doing amazing things. He was doing already with Dreams in PSVR. And he's trying every single technique. So he has his input and then a minor AI enhancement. But he's driving the creation. But even with that, what the AI gives is a hallucination. So it's like, was it what you wanted to see or you just accept it? So it's down. I mean, it's a personal choice, it's a creative choice, it's a client choice. If they want to do it that way, their choice. It's their money.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Absolutely. Would you say real-time technologies, or kind of more and more people also in the visual effects industry are starting to use the Unities and the Unreals and everything that is basically real-time or GPU accelerated, whatever it is, like also simulations running on GPUs and so on. In general, would you say this mixture between kind of offline rendering and real-time rendering, or kind of the impact of real-time technologies, is this more sneaky but also dangerous, or would you say this is much more harmful and less scary and just more like a natural progression of tools in general? How do you compare real-time technologies in visual effects to the impact of AI?
I wouldn't think. I mean, I don't think that we're using that much. Like they are there, but we are not using real-time technologies as much yet. I'm sure.
One example would be virtual production, for example, right? Obviously, which impacts not the entire industry, but let's say certain aspects of post-production.
Yeah, but that I wouldn't consider that a harmful thing. Quite the opposite. I think it's a creative and it's not cheap. This is quite expensive. So it's cost effective? I don't know. It depends on what you're trying to do, who is trying to do it, the budget that the production has. So even like looking at the volume versus a green screen virtual production, right? So there is levels of where you can use these technologies these days, for sure. Adding Unreal, I'm a big advocate, or Unity, like getting into real time. I'll say that's the future, but maybe we are seeing it as a future, but it's going to be another stream or another part of the pie. Nothing's going to be an absolute truth. It's going to be high-end content, will be high-end content. I don't think you can remove pixel fucking from the equation. So as long as you have pixel fucking, you won't be using AI there.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah.
So pixel fucking ended up being a good thing.
Yeah. But you can go too far. You can go not enough far, but also too far. Right?
No, I'll say real-time technologies are here to help, and AI will end up helping us once we get the legislation and the reins on what should be done with AI and what AI is not meant to be in the creative process.
Yeah. I'm curious about how the pie chart, basically, the slices are moving and kind of different things are coming in. Like the whole AI thing at the moment is just a sliver, but eventually it might become a really large piece of the pie, while also real-time technologies have been slowly coming into the market, basically. And using real-time technologies definitely has an impact on cost, has an impact, but also an impact on productivity. And because of that, I was just curious to see, I mean, I also personally, I don't really see a negative impact of real-time technologies in general. I was just for completeness sake, basically, I was curious, maybe you heard something like that. Or that maybe, I don't know, if people say, well, it was something that is produced, let's say, in Unreal, then people may say, yeah, but the visual fidelity it doesn't look real enough yet, right? But then it would be the wrong visualization tool in the first place, right?
If anything, all these new technologies open the door for more creativity or more creative people to do their own thing. I was even telling my wife yesterday, we were just on a walk and we were for some drinks, and I said to her, well, we should do our own content in Unreal. I mean, there is now Unreal Fortnite that you can monetize.
Yeah.
So there's so many options out there, and those tools didn't exist. Now a cinematographer or an artist can just get on with these tools, not depend on high-end quality renders. Just need a powerful computer, pretty much.
Yeah, and in the end, it's still, if your story is bad that you're telling, nobody cares about the visuals, right?
100%. Just create a compelling story, people will watch it. If the story is crap, it doesn't matter if the budget is $1 gazillion. So.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. Just addressing something regarding international business or business in general. Now, so obviously a lot of the big tech companies are investing in AI and hardware production for the AI training and the whole infrastructure that is needed also for new chip productions and so on. So they're massively investing in the technology and the whole framework. Now, seeing the pressure of big tech companies puts in, let's say, a lot of, you could say, pressure on investors who are obviously also deeply invested, for example, in creative companies that produce the content. So this could be the film studios, but this could also be obviously a little bit later down in the food chain into visual effects companies. And so a lot of them, I mean, the whole context with Sora and so on is companies are really scared at the moment to potentially, because of AI, of the threat, having to close down. So they are doing things like they have to let people go because there is not much work, also the writer's strike and all of those elements. Or they are asking, like DNEG, for example, has been asking their staff, take a significant price cut or salary cut, or otherwise we have to let you go. So there's this trickle-down effect, which if you look at it from a distance, it absolutely makes sense. It's investors are afraid, companies are afraid, and obviously staff or people that are employed are all afraid. And it's just people are a little bit in this mentality or in this mode of let's wait and see where it balances out exactly. But so where I would like to address or where I would like to hear your opinion is that because of there's a risk of, from the employee side of things, to see that companies are just bad because they're letting people go. But that are these cascading effects from these really, really large tech investments going into the future over the next 5 to 10 years, and this incredibly strong insecurity because of a lot of clickbaity articles on the web and so on. So that in the whole cascading, looking at the employers, let's say visual effects companies, they have to also survive because it's better to, let's say, let 10 or 15 or 25% of the workforce go than having to close the whole company. Right. And so there's this cascading effect. And in the end, very often, let's say, in the visual effects industry or in the games industry, on kind of on social media, you see that companies are bad, period. But also they are just reacting to the next cascade further up. Long story short, how would you address these cascading effects and saying that still, even if companies are forced for the survival, to explain to people that for companies are not per se bad or don't have per se negative intent, even though they have to let people go? And how can this be communicated well? I think it's a really tricky discussion. But me being in this situation of having staff and having to or seeing lots of companies going bust during pandemic and the writer strikes and so on, and being directly hit of that, I'm just trying to figure out how can the whole process be communicated a little bit more transparent and saying how urgent is it. And also as an employer, we are trying to do the absolute best to be able to solve this in the short and midterm future. How do you see these let's say political dynamics?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. I think the first thing that any company has to do is be transparent as possible with the situation, not hold on the economics. I know it's complicated, and it's easy for me to say because I'm not in the reins of any company, but I always think that companies, and I tell this to people when we're working, we are here, this is a business. We don't have like endless amount of time to do things. We're here to make money. If the company doesn't make money, there is no company, you don't have a job. So we have to have that mentality thing, always. Even if you thinking that you are creating art or you are helping the team to create art, you have to think that this is a business. The company needs to make money. And the problem is that the company is seen as an entity. And like you said, sometimes it's like an evil entity that only looks for their own profit rather than their own employees.
Yeah.
How do we...
Obviously, that happens also very often, especially the more pure investment you have in a company's activities, obviously, right? But then it's so easy to forget about this detail and making, it may sound one-sided, but making people aware of the consequences of their decision of working at certain locations, which I believe is also very important. It's not just always black and white.
No, 100%. And there is no, like I said, there is no absolute answers or statements that anyone can say about this is good, this is bad. Well, you have to elaborate and we can discuss on why this is good for you or this is bad for the other person. What I like to think, and this is also just going back to how I grew up, my family had a business. We were the employees. At some point, we had employees. We were the workforce. We know what it is to look for the money in the company. And maybe this is not the situation for that many companies nowadays, because like you said, they are funded with cash from investors, so they own like answers to their investors who want money, who want like revenue, like at certain time every year. So it's like we can go as, I would say, honest business owners and look down to our employees and say, I'm trying to do my best to keep us afloat. Let's do a pay cut and whatnot. If you are a small company, medium-sized company, and you have good communication with your employees and they trust you and they see that you are not bullshitting them, maybe they go along. Then again, everyone has their own, every employee, every boss has their own background, like you said, that we don't see. So they might have families. They might be from a different country on a visa that if they are not employed by your company, they have to leave the country. We've seen this here nowadays in Toronto. I have friends that had to leave the country, or they have kids and they are in school here and they are now like, okay, I might have to go back to my country. I cannot work for anyone else. So
it's an extreme impact, right?
It's insane. Like what's happening right now, it's the perfect storm. at many levels, especially here in Canada, because the government has changed student visas, working permits, like the LMIAs, they call here, Labor Market Impact Agreement or something like that. They have also modified that. So there's a lot of, and then the Quebec tax rebates and strikes. But going back to your point, I don't know if there is a way that an employer can trust, or an employee can trust the employer if the employer doesn't behave transparently enough, honestly enough to explain the whole situation of the company to the employers. And even though if you know what's going on, you might decide, okay, I cannot live like this. I have to go somewhere else. So and maybe you as a boss, you don't want to be 100% transparent, because if you are, then you will lose your employees. So you're caught in between two walls, which make the situation complicated. I don't think I have an answer for you. I'm afraid. Sorry.
No. But I'm trying to go exactly the honest direction, and trying to be there for the people, but also really explaining the seriousness of the situation, right?
Yeah, unfortunately this year, I mean, since last year, but especially this year, is hitting us all very, very hard in the industry. And like I said, some people might go along easier than others, especially if you've been in the industry for longer. Maybe you have some savings, but again, you don't want to burn your savings. If your partner, your wife, your husband, they have a job, maybe it might be easier. I don't know. So many different circumstances.
Time will tell, right? Time will tell.
Yeah, and I think I put it on that article that we were referring to earlier. There's a clip from Michael Caine saying, like, use the adversity or use the difficulty. So that should spark more creativity on all of us. Okay, there is this situation. We cannot get around it. We have to figure out a way of staying afloat. All of us.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about advice, because I really liked your inputs from before. So especially for younger artists, do you have some advice in how to get into the creative industries and how to get into the visual effects industry?
Yeah, sure. If you are into either animation, or that this is kind of where I started with, or effects, where I'm at now, I got a really, really good advice from one person, Raquel Benitez, who was a producer at the animation companies. She said, if you want to be an animator, you want to learn how things move, just sit on a bench in a park and look, like observe motion, observe people. In my case, like I want to do fluids, just go to the beach, go to a pond and throw stones. Just look at things. Just try to train your eye on how things should behave. So when you replicate in them, you know how they should be. Don't copy, don't look at CG references. Just look at nature, look at the real thing. Don't look things in slow-mo. Yeah, for sure. We all look at things in slow-mo to see the detail, but look at things in real time. So you know exactly how they move. Never stop learning. Just keep constantly pushing yourself and your knowledge, because the more you learn, the more things you will want to learn, and the more paths that will open for your future, basically. Never settle. Just keep curious, keep learning. Those will be more. One, and probably the most important one, be kind. Always be kind to others. Be a good person.
Yeah. Also, the industry is too small. Try to not burn bridges.
Oh, 100%. I can tell you a small anecdote. I was in a company here in Toronto. We were on a client call, and I was looking at the producer, how he behaved. And after the call, I chat with him. Hey, dude, I really like how do you manage the whole meeting with the client. Oh, thank you, blah, blah, blah. And say, I saw the name. I said, just as a joke. I said, I have a friend who just... No, I said, are you British? Because of the accent. And the guy, yeah, I'm British. Oh, I have a friend with your same surname. And he went, oh, it's probably my brother. And he was his brother. And I had worked with his brother 20 years ago in the UK. So it's like from one continent to another. We had worked with two brothers. Didn't know he had a brother here. Didn't know that he was my friend.
You never, right? Never assume. We've had this before. Never assume. That's cool. As a next point or as a next question, I want to pick something up that you mentioned about 2 hours ago or so. And I love this stuff. So you mentioned before that you have a mechanism or a definition of how to find out if you're happy, or you need to define to yourself or to listen to yourself if you're happy in a certain situation. What are the conscious questions you are asking yourself to find out if you're happy or not?
It was a long time ago. No, I think it's just the mood. The mood. If you look at yourself every day in the mirror when you just wake up and you can feel it. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. Or there is something that you have to change if you want to keep doing what you're doing. So you cannot be miserable. You have to be happy. You have to be in a good mood to be good to others, to enjoy your life. What's the purpose of life? Damn it, we're going to get philosophical now. Be happy. Be sure that others are happy being with you. So you just have to try your best.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about all these topics since quite some time. Also, obviously, also since I'm having staff since some time, but also kind of trying to understand myself better and being aware of certain things, but also being able to verbalize and pinpoint what it is that doesn't make you happy. That's something that, at least for my brain, really helped me in kind of just trying to analyze what it really, really is deep down and start making notes, and then kind of trying to untangle some of those knots. I think because it allows you also to define your value system much better. Kind of also going on into a tiny little bit of a tangent there is, I've had multiple kind of discussions also with artists that say, I want to have the statement, I want to have a successful career. But I found in my experience, if you ask, what do you precisely mean with having a career? What do you mean by that? Because that's very, very, very subjective. Does this correlate to earning a lot? Does this correlate to, going from job to job to job to have as long CV as humanly possible? How do you define success, or how do you really, really define your career and be able to precise about the definition and the wording of that? Did you see this in past in your experience of people that say, or just knowing based on societal pressure that they want and quote unquote have to be successful in a career, but not be able to really pinpoint what it is, what it means for them?
I cannot say that. Nothing comes to mind that speaks to that in the sense of me knowing someone that has asked themselves, oh, I'm not successful. I haven't, not from the top of my mind. I could say that maybe it's what you said, is that it's a social pressure, or do we really personally need that? I don't. I don't feel the need of being successful. To be fair, I'm the least competitive person in the world. I wouldn't race you. I'll let you win. So it's sure. I can be cheeky playing basketball. But other than that, but the other day when I was in the islands, there was some renovations in my parents' house, and my sister had a frame from my time at Sony PlayStation that had a PlayStation game disc, gold, that we were given, every single one, that artist or programmer that worked on that game, for the success of the game on selling, I think it was 500,000 copies.
Nice. I
said to my sister, you can throw that away. But she didn't throw it away. And my mom sees that as me being successful. So is it your success, or is it how other people perceive you? It's you have a company. To me, you are successful. You have achieved a goal probably that you had of setting up your own company. And I've known you for I don't know how many years, 15 years, something like that. I've always...
Did we meet? I think 2012. Yeah, certainly 12 years at least. Yeah.
But to me, I never thought, oh, that guy is successful. I never thought of that. When I saw you have a company, like, well, that seems like a goal for him. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and maybe it wasn't your own goal or your own final path to success. Maybe for you, it's I'm a good boss, so I'm successful. For me, it's like I see my daughters doing good, and I succeeded of teaching them how to be good people.
I just think to you, these things come very natural. In, let's say, the value system or a definition of success, I think to you, these things come very, very successful. For me, they were not easy to distinguish. What does success mean? If you asked me half a year ago, if people ask me, are you successful? I would say, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not, because of this and that. And then people eventually, through the dialogue, I started to dissect these things and say, oh, wait, there's this societal definition that I also kind of got basically in what's the typical success means. But to find your own definition of philosophical definition of what does success actually mean, to me, this was definitely a process. And I see just also in multiple other people that they haven't figured it out because they're not yet asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And maybe on top of that, because you seem to have figured these things out, is
no.
Which go
no,
ahead.
I was going to say that maybe it's just because of the I wouldn't say the definition of success, but the expectations that one may have with what they do. Like for you may want your company to have certain goals and you haven't reached them yet, which I don't know. So I see from the outside, without knowing your background, without knowing your expectations, I see, okay, he's successful. And then for you, because you have all the information, you go like, I haven't reached my potential yet. So I'm not successful. Yeah. Probably the totally valid and the way it should be. Again, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. We don't know anything about the other person, or we just scratch the surface. We only see the facade, right? And you see the same. Like you look at me, you say, "Oh, you are successful because you have figured it out." I don't. I keep trying to ruminate. Or
it's always those damn assumptions, right? All right. So regarding these things, regarding the topic of advice, which life advice do you give your kids?
I think there's only one, which is like follow your passion, and we will always support them on whatever they try to do. I mean, for sure, if there is something that we think is not the right thing, I will prefer for them not to do it, and we will tell them. But in general, we haven't put them in anything that they didn't want to do, and they seem to be going in the direction they want to go. One is studying Vancouver natural sciences, like conservation, land preservation. She wants to work in the forests, in the jungles and things like that, like helping the planet, helping us all. And the other one seems to be moving towards a health medical career. So not 3D.
Yeah. It's probably a good choice.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. All right, let's just head to the 3 final questions, which I'm always asking. So, which one single book that everybody should read, which one would you recommend and why?
I cannot give you a single one. I am not like of absolute.
Nice.
But can I give you 3?
It's a good answer. You can either stick to 0 or you can give me 3 also. That's also possible.
I'll give you 3. I'll give you 3 that somehow I will explain why. I think that books are like music, things that come to you or you do based on your mood or your age. When you're growing up, you prefer to read something, to listen to something, right? Life is a journey, right? So when I was I would say maybe my 20s or late teens, I read Unbearable, Lightness of Being, Milan Kundera. That was one of my preferred books for years. I read it, I don't know how many times. It was like, I will go back to that book. I love it. I read lots from Kundera after, but that was the one for me. And then a few years ago, I came across, I think you know, Zero Din. And it's not a book per se. It's more like a collection of articles and writings. And he wrote a book called, I forget the full title. It's
we can
we'll figure it out later.
I know the author. Yeah.
It's kind of his own experiences, but the path less chosen, I think, is in the title. I thought that was a really good read because it's kind of one of these books that you open from any page and you get something out of it.
Oh, cool.
And in a similar way, I think it was Lessons from a Path Less Chosen, I think. And similar to that, funny enough, I just finished reading on a plane coming back to Toronto last week, the latest one from producer Rick Rubin, creative...
Music producer.
Yeah. I think it's called The Creative... I'm terrible. I read things, but I don't remember the titles. I think it's Creative Choices or Creative Minds. Anyway, similar in the same way that you can open that book and read the chapter and you will get something out of it. And it's more like, it's not, I wouldn't call them this, how do you call these books like that that help you?
Self-help?
Yeah, but it's not that. It's more like on the creative side. It's like, okay, he gives like tips, like constant tips on, okay, if you're doing this, maybe you should look at this or that. And for a creative person, I think those are like great tips all across the book. Yeah. And in the case of Zero Dim's book, it's more like at the personal, being a good person level. I thought it was a really good one. I probably could just go back and scratch on other ones. I have a really, but this is in Spanish, it's been translated, but a novelist that sadly died last year from the islands. It was actually my neighbor. Or my parents' neighbor. But those were like super nice novels, very local. I couldn't stick to one, sorry.
All good. Now, if you could change one thing on this planet to make it a better place, what would it be?
Oh no, it's not a single one again. But going to the point of moving around, living in a global world, I would eliminate any barriers that make us less human. And I will just put it in quotes so people don't get crazy. It's like religions, countries, capitalism. I will slash tax, no tagging. We're just humans. We just need to get along with each other, help our neighbor.
Yeah. Cool. I agree, by the way. And then last question from my end for today is, who would you like to see as a guest on the 3D Environment podcast?
And I will put Matt Diaz-Buehler on an Inception podcast, interviewing himself. That would be like a cool one.
Would go like 10 hours.
I would say there's a guy we used to work with who is a super talented artist. It's called Matthew Schofield here in Toronto. And he paints like tiny pictures from Polaroids, but with such great detail that it's mind-blowing. And I think he's...
Interesting.
When I met him, he was in matte painting, and now I think he's an art director or creative director in one of the companies here in town. I think he might be an interesting artist mindset coming from environments, also like as a matte painter. And
I'll definitely check him out and put him on the list. So thanks for that recommendation. Awesome. Anything last from your end?
I always tell people to be kind, be nice, be good people. So that's the last words. Get along with each other, be good.
Nice. I again also here. I completely agree. Thank you, Gus. It's been amazing to have you. We've been talking for quite some time, but that's just how we roll on this podcast. Thank you so much for everything.
My pleasure.
All right, cool. Enjoy the rest of the day and talk to you very soon. Cheers.
You too.